Let's now shift focus to West Asia. Iran and Saudi Arabia are set to engage in joint military drills in the Red Sea. This is big and comes with far-reaching implications. You see, it would mark a first for these regional powerhouses. For a long time, these West Asia rivals have supported opposing factions in conflict areas throughout the region. They cut off diplomatic ties in 2016 and reconnected last year through an unexpected deal mediated by China. Nevertheless, these joint exercises represent a major change. The question is, what is driving this shift? What's going on? Why is America's ally conducting joint exercises with Iran, the arch enemy of the United States? Could the Gaza war be a factor, or is there more to it? You see, 1 year ago, Saudi Arabia was on the verge of recognizing Israel in a normalization agreement that would have dramatically changed the region's dynamics. It would have further isolated Iran. Now that agreement seems more distant than ever. Instead, Saudi Arabia, a US ally, is basically building closer ties with its ally's arch enemy, Iran. The American ally has stated that any future diplomatic accord for Gaza now depends on Israel acknowledging a Palestinian state. That's a remarkable turnaround for Saudi Arabia. And it's also a big setback for all US efforts in the region. Here's what we know so far. According to an Iranian report, not confirmed by Saudi Arabia, Iran and Saudi Arabia are planning to conduct joint military exercises in the Red Sea. The commander of Iran's Navy, Admiral Shahram Irani, was quoted by Iranian news agency saying, I'm quoting, Saudi Arabia has asked that we organize joint exercises in the Red Sea. Without providing details, including a timeline of when the drills could take place, he said, I'm quoting further, coordination is underway and delegations from both countries will hold the necessary consultations on how to conduct the exercise, quote unquote. And there's another reason why this development is extremely interesting. Remember, since the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza started last year, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have waged a war against Israeli and American ships in the Red Sea, as well as the Gulf of Aden. They say that they attack to show their solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. The Houthis also have launched missiles targeting Israel, drawing retaliatory airstrikes from the Israelis late last month. But that's not all. The Iran-backed Houthis have also been fighting a Saudi-led coalition since 2015 after seizing the capital Sana'a and most of Yemen's population centers. The Houthis had seized the capital of Yemen and forced the internationally recognized government south to Aden. Saudi Arabia, which has backed the Aden government, engaged in a delicate balancing act. Why is that, you're wondering? Well, it's because Saudi Arabia is one of the world's biggest oil exporters. Naturally, it has tried to extricate itself from war right on its doorstep. When the Houthi attacks on ships crossing the Red Sea started last year, Saudi Arabia did not join the US-led naval coalition to deter the Houthi attacks. Efforts by the kingdom to broker a Yemen peace deal, in fact, also faltered in the wake of the Houthi attacks on ships. Which brings us back to what's happening today. Did America's inability to stop Israel from antagonizing everyone in West Asia lead to this? Did the growing unease over America's inability to de-escalate the tensions prompt some of its closest allies to increase engagement with its enemy number one in the region? All signs on the ground do point to this. You see, over the past few months, Arab nations have been leveraging their revived relations with the Islamic Republic, basically to ward off a wider regional war. While the world has focused on the Gaza war and the possibility of the Iran-Israel war, this is what's been happening in the background. This month, foreign ministers of the Persian Gulf states met for the first time as a group with their Iranian counterpart. This is a kind of reconciliation that has the ability to chip away centuries of sectarian antagonism. It is a sharp shift in a region where rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran drenched the region in bloodshed for decades. Iran has continued to reach out. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi even visited Saudi Arabia in an effort to ease the tensions. He also visited Jordan before traveling to Egypt and Turkey. The visit to Egypt was the first by an Iranian foreign minister in 12 years. This is all new. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, remains adamant and continues to reject the creation of a Palestinian state. Saudi officials have passionately taken to newspapers, through public speeches as well, to put a two-state solution on the talking table. That, Saudi Arabia says, is the only way at this point for Israel to win favor with Saudi Arabia, which, remember, is largely seen as the leader of the Arab world in a way. So what really changed for Saudi Arabia? It's this. These images from Gaza of children buried alive, of mothers grieving over their dead babies, of Palestinians starving because Israel had blocked aid from entering. All this, in a way, made it impossible for Saudi leadership to ignore the issue of the Palestinian statehood. All this has set back any Israeli integration into the region, a long-held goal of the US President Joe Biden. In fact, on Tuesday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Israel for his 11th trip to the region in a year. He came after the death of the Hamas leader and the October 7 architect, Yahya Sinwar, to basically push for a ceasefire in Gaza, but the US calls for calm fell on deaf ears in Israel, with Netanyahu vowing to push ahead with its wars in Gaza and Lebanon. Blinken's visit also comes as Israel prepares a response to Iran's October 1 firing of hundreds of missiles. It's safe to say then that the US may be trying hard, but its diplomacy is faltering. Iran, on the other hand, is working overtime to reach out to neighbors. For the past month, Iran has dispatched its top officials and diplomats for an intensive campaign of diplomacy with its neighbors. Neighbors that host US military personnel and bases. Neighbors that had spent decades brawling with Iran. Iran is turning the tables. It is wooing America's allies, and America's allies are now opting to engage with Iran again. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.